Over the weekend, USC had one of their bigger official visitor lists, but there were no commitments. What does it mean?
You are Locked On USC, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fight on, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Holkin, and thank you. Thank you for making Locked On USC your first listen every day. Whether you're watching this show on YouTube, wherever you want to download this podcast, I tell you every time, this show's always going to be free. And I want to remind you every time, the show's always going to appreciate your support. Today's episode, it's brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers, you can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So USC had one of their better official visitor lists over the weekend. No new commitments came out of it. Reason being, everybody except for one was already committed to the class. So I think it means USC's class is close to being closed. Official visit weekends are usually a gathering of the prospects looking, to make a decision that's going to affect the rest of their, their football careers as well as the rest of their regular lives. Choosing a college isn't an easy decision. There's a lot of factors that are involved. But like I said, all the guys who were on a visit, they were already committed, except for one. It was more of a meet and greet, get together, birthday party for Madden Reardon. He was one of the guys taking his official visits. So yeah, that's how Madden celebrated his birthday. Was an official visit to USC with his family, and he just wanted to celebrate with his friends and family. Can't think of a better place, right? His good buddy Brandon Lockhart, he was also there. Official visits are for the young men and their families, their entire family, not just mom and dad. They can bring their brothers, their sisters, anybody they can squeeze into the car. Both Brandon and Madden have been committed to USC, I don't know, since forever. You got to go back to at least 2023 for both of them. Lockhart's, Brandon's dad, he posted on X, Brandon's been committed since 2023. Signing day is just a formality. The boy was born to be a Trojan. Interesting choice of words. Like I said, Madden was born to be a Trojan. He was celebrating his birthday on the 20th, I believe. So he's been a Trojan since birth. I mentioned Luke Wafel. He was committed. Well, he committed to USC last week. So I talked about it on Friday's episode of Locked on USC. He was the latest commitment. So you got Jamin Winfield. He was also on his official visit over, this past weekend. By the way, just a little side note, I guess is a perfect place to kind of inject this in here. The chances of Jamin decommitting, staying home to play for Texas, I think those chances drop like a cannonball dropping in the pool. It ain't going to happen. The chances of it happening, slim and none. The reason being, remember Richard Wesley, the young man who did the cannonball up there at Oregon on his unofficial visit? Well, he committed to the Longhorns over the weekend. So, ouch, Oregon. That's got to hurt. It's going to sting a little, right? Here's the rest of the guys who were taking their official visit during Madden's birthday party bash, hosted at, by the way, this weekend, it was at the Terranea Resort. It's on the Palos Verdes Peninsula. If you know, you know. But it is literally one of the most exclusive resort areas in Southern California. That's what other programs have to compete against. There's only two programs out there that can give you the type of visual that USC can with their location. Miami and Hawaii. That's it. UCLA, obviously they're from LA, but when it comes to football, you don't think of UCLA. You think of USC in LA. So here are the other guys who were coming to the birthday party. You had Mark Bowman, the tight end from Mater Dei. Breck Colajay, the interior offensive lineman from IMG Academy. He is the only one there who is not committed yet. Running back Deshaun Rideau, offensive tackle Vlad Diakonov, linebacker from Mater Dei Sean Scott, Jake Johnson, the defensive lineman from Texas, Another friend of the show, Chase Dinas, he was there hanging out. So as I mentioned, excuse me, everyone save for Cola J, Madden Reardon, Brandon Lockhart, et al., they're all committed to this class already. One of my favorite picks that I saw from this visit weekend, it was when Vlad and Chase, they were standing side by side in their Trojan uniforms. It was, how they do the picture shoots? Well, they were standing side by side, and Zach Hansen was right next to him. It's a really, really tall wall, and those are your offensive tackles in this class. Zach Hansen is like 6'8", 6'9". Vlad and Chase are every bit of their 6'7" listing. They are right there, and they're still growing. So far, USC has hosted 35 official visitors. As I said, this class is close to being closed. 30 of those visitors are already committed. Seriously. I don't know who's going to get those final spots, but, you got 30 commits. You have to imagine you're going to get at least one or two more before, USC fall camp opens the end of July, which, by the way, we're just 68 days away from kickoff. Beat the Bears. Fall camp's supposed to open the end of July. One of those spots, one of those 3, 4, 5 remaining spots is going to go to a wide receiver from the state of Texas. I don't know if it's going to be Jalen Lott or if it's going to be Booby Feaster. I know Jalen Lott's recruiting prediction machine. It's got some momentum recently. It's predicting him to go to USC. And you actually had guys putting in predictions for USC while Jalen Lott was on his official visit to Oregon this past weekend. Double ouch. Booby Feaster, I've talked about it before on Locked On USC. My everydayers, you've heard me talk about it. Anyways, he's going to make his announcement July 8th. I don't know what Jalen Lott's timeline is, but I think the first one who takes a spot is guaranteed a spot. I'm not sure USC can get both wide receivers into this class, but look, there's no wrong answer. You get either or. And I don't think it's out of the question that USC takes both. We'll see. I'm hoping that childhood relationship between Mark Bowman and Cannon Smith works its magic with Breck Kolajay. Remember, all three of them played youth football together in Colorado. Mark Bowman was their quarterback. Look, I'm going to be okay if USC's class is locked up before the season starts. I'm hoping, USC fans, I'm talking to you. Hopefully USC fans will stay content while other programs are trying to play catch up. Remember, USC has the number 1 ranked recruiting class. Some of it has to do with the quantity of players. They've got 30. A lot of it has to do with the quality of those quantity. So, look. Recruiting is coming to a close here. USC's class is getting close. They're going to have a few spots left open during the season, just in case there's some late bloomers out there in the senior season and, maybe somebody decommits from another program and it's exactly what USC is looking for. So I think for the remaining recruiting season, other than focusing on those last few spots for USC's class, we're going to have some fun. Let's hang out together, hang out with me here on Locked On USC. Make sure you're tuning in every day. Click like, subscribe. The whole routine. Subscribe, hit the like button, click that bell notification button. All three of those going to keep helping the show grow. But during the summer, let's have some fun, right? Let's watch Oregon fan toil in their despair, right? USC's kicking butt on the recruiting trail. That's been fun to watch. It's almost in fact, it's the only thing that's been more fun to watch. Actually, I should say slightly less fun, but still fun, is watching Oregon's class just decompose in front of their eyes. Yes, they got Jet Washington last week. That's okay. USC can't get everybody. We'll see if they can hold on to Jet. But right now, it's a tale of two recruiting classes. USC, number one, not showing no signs of slowing down. Oregon, not number one, barely hanging on to the top 10. And they're just desperate. They're looking for anybody right now. All right. So that was the official visit weekend. Madden Reardon celebrated his birthday with all of his friends and fellow commits. USC just had a fun meet and greet weekend. Maybe they did enough to get Breck College to pull the trigger. But like I said, there's only a few spots left. Who's going to get those last ones? If you watched last week, one of my episodes of Locked on USC, I talked about those Willy Wonka golden tickets. There's 5 left. Who's getting them? Luke Wafel made it 30. Who wants to be 31, 32, 33, 34, 35? Because after that, there might not be any spots left. All right. Got a couple segments left to go on the show. We're going to talk about the offensive line, their timeline in the next segment. And then stick around for that third segment as well. We're going to talk, we've been doing, top whatever since 2000. Chris Arledge sent me a question. Mark, give me your top 5 games since 2000. We're going to talk about that on Inside the Trojan Huddle this week. I'm going to give you a preview of mine in the third segment. So let's make sure you stick around for that. Summer sports are in full swing. Oklahoma City, they won the NBA championship. Congratulations. So whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action, right? Of course you are. You're a sports fan. Then why not make it a little more thrilling, a little bit more entertaining? You can control that action. With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned on the beach. It's easy to use. FanDuel gives you a fast payout. You're not going to wait around for your winnings. And FanDuel even makes the regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether you're placing a same-game parlay, you're watching a bet right into the 9th inning, FanDuel is going to make it feel like you're part of the action. If you're new to FanDuel, perfect time. New customers, you can bet just $5. And if you win that first $5 bet, you're going to get $150 in bonus bets. That easy. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. I'm going to ask you, do not be an O-line panicking. Don't panic. Everything's going to be fine. I know one area of concern this offseason heading into the 2025 season is whether or not the offensive line is going to be good enough to make Jaden Mayaba a better quarterback. Look, USC has 3 games to get the offensive line's chemistry working. The season sets up perfectly for those of you who are saying, you know what, the offensive line, they need some time. Well, the schedule sets up perfectly. I've talked about the projected starters. Elijah Page at left tackle, DJ Wingfield left guard, General Jayonre Reed at center, Alani Noah right guard, Tobias Raymond right tackle. Things could change between now and the end of fall camp. Obviously the first thing that comes into mind, and I'm knocking on wood, obviously injuries, they play a role. But assuming that's the starting offensive line, everybody gets through fall camp. USC, those guys, they're going to have Missouri State. That's who USC opens the season with. Then Georgia Southern follows that up. Both of those games at the Coliseum. Okay, home cooking against less competition. And then USC hits the road for Purdue. That's game 3. That's what you need. Those are the 3 perfect types of games to help this team, to help the offensive line, turn into 5 fingers in a glove, where they fit perfectly. Everyone's comfortable once they take their spots. Those are 3 easy games. Like I said, get your stuff together. And then the team comes home for game number 4. They host Michigan State. Sparty. Here's what I'm looking for in those first 3 games, specifically those first 2 games at home. I'm hoping the starters look so good in those first 2 games that, the backups, I hope those guys get a significant amount of playing time. I want to see the offensive line put in a similar position, in a similar role that the defense was in last year when they played Utah State in the fourth quarter. Remember all those backups that were preserving the shutout? No, I remember watching the sideline and how jacked up those guys were. All the starters who were getting some rest, watching their understudies get a chance. They love that stuff. That's how a team builds up their camaraderie, the trust. Knowing that, hey, if somebody needs to take a play off because they're banged up or whatever, they trust the coaching staff, and the starters are going to trust their backups. And if somebody who gets more playing time feels like, you know what, I'm going to hurt the team if I stay on the field, that's a trust factor where they can take themselves out because they know the person behind them can get the job done just as well. The offensive line has to use these games to prepare themselves for the meat of the schedule that's going to come up. Those games against Michigan, on the road at Nebraska, Notre Dame, Illinois. These are the games against Missouri State, Georgia Southern, to a lesser extent Purdue on the road, where you kind of figure out, the coaching staff can figure out, all right, who needs to work on their run block technique? Where do we need to improve our communication? We need to make sure the guys on your right, guys on your left, they're thinking what the other is thinking. This is going to, if John Ray Reed is going to be the center, he's got to know that the left guard and the right guard know their jobs. Whoever's calling out the signals on the offensive line, typically it's the center. Again, these are the games that the offensive line has to look dominant in. They can't look like, all right, well, they're coming along. No. You're not coming along when you're playing Missouri State and Georgia Southern. There's a reason you're at USC and not playing for those 2 programs. No offense. But USC is USC, and Missouri State's playing their first game as an FBS level team. And Georgia Southern is, hey, Conference USA, it's Clay Helton. Pardon me. So, yeah, USC has to look dominant. In fact, I'll go as far as saying the offensive line's goal for the first few weeks is not allowing any sacks or any tackles for loss. Now, I get it. Someone's going to make a mistake. Someone's going to get into the backfield, create some pressure. Stuff happens. But still, that should be their goal. No sacks allowed through those first 3 games. Show how dominant you are. And if you're planning to run the ball more, impose your will. Don't just take care of that guy in front of you across the defensive line. Get to the second level. Pancake that linebacker. Take out a defensive back. So, yeah, I think the offensive line needs to hang a bagel heading into game number 4 against Michigan State. That's where the competition starts to really level up. And when I say they need to hang a bagel, no sacks allowed. No TFLs allowed. Is that a tall order? Is that a big ask? I don't think it's an unreasonable goal, especially considering the competition. Look, I get it. Josh Henson, he's taken over Purdue, their offensive line, offensive coordinator. But Purdue is going to be battling Northwestern to stay out of that 18th spot in the Big Ten Conference with 18 teams. So Zach Hansen, look, he inherited, I think, a pretty good room. And then the transfer portal delivered, 2 guys with starting experience, DJ Wingfield at Purdue. John Ray Reed, Syracuse. If Coach Hanson's development skills match his recruiting skills, I think USC is going to be in good hands. And if USC's offensive line plays up to their potential, yeah, I think USC fans are going to feel a lot better as the season goes on. All right, one more segment to go. Top 5 games. Mine top 5 games since 2000, in the last 25 years. And believe it or not, this is a hard list. Your list might be different than mine, but I'm going to give you mine coming up next. If you had to pick the best game since 2000, which ones would you pick? There are plenty to choose from. I mean, a lot. Don't forget, from 2001 through 2008, 2009, USC was a juggernaut. And they were entertainment. They were a hard ticket to get. Doesn't matter if they were playing at the Coliseum or on the road. USC was must-see TV. So like I said, plenty of games to choose from. But I'm going to make it tougher on you. You can only pick 5 games. It's easy to pick 10. It's easier. But try and narrow it down to 5. Not as easy. That's the task. You got to pick 5. Here's my list. And again, Chris Arledge, he hosts the Inside the Trojan Huddle show that we do every week over there at wearesc.com. He, myself, Eric McKinney, Greg Katz, we submitted our list. I'm giving it a preview because you're going to have to watch the show to get theirs. All right, so starting with number 5, working its way up to number 1. 2001, the Westward Ho game. USC 27, UCLA 0. This one, for me, it's a personal favorite. Yeah, earlier that year, in October, in fact, LA Times writer, one of the better ones, Bill Plaschke, he wrote an article called Westward Ho. This is a Bruins town. And literally a month later, one of my favorite all-time players, Antoine Simmons, he had that pick 6 where he caught the ball between his legs, went 5-hole, ran it back for a touchdown. That pass came off of Bruin quarterback Corey Paws. It was intended for wide receiver Brian Poley-Dixon, who literally thought the play was dead. He had no idea. Antoine Simmons scooped that thing up and took it to the house. So yeah, final score USC 27, UCLA 0. That pick 6 made it 14-0 at the end of the first quarter. That game literally was a precursor of what was about to happen for the next 4 or 5 years, where USC just, like I said, they owned college football. They turned into a dynasty that nobody knew what to do with until the NCAA came a calling. Anyway, number 4, 2002, USC 44, Notre Dame 13. A couple of things that stood out to me from this game. It was number 6, USC, hosting number 7, Notre Dame. I mentioned the score, 44-13. This was the first game of 3 consecutive games against the Fighting Irish where USC beat them by 31 points. It became a running joke. It was a meme. And that was also the game that Carson Palmer went ham. I mean, literally, dude went gonzo. He won the Heisman. Carson, he threw for 425 yards, 4 touchdowns. USC's offense, 610 total yards. And just to kind of put an exclamation point on it, USC's defense was pretty good that day. They held Notre Dame to 109 yards from scrimmage. That is complete domination. This was the game that signaled USC was back. And it was also their first top 10 win since 1998. After that game, and USC beat Iowa in the Orange Bowl, Ohio State beat Miami. It was Kirk Herbstreit who said, I don't think anybody wants to play USC right now, including Ohio State. So that's how good USC looked at the end of the 2002 season. And that's what rolled into a 34-game winning streak, almost a three-peat. Game number 3, 2004. USC 24, Cal 17. Number 1 USC versus number 7 Cal. Yeah. By the way, that was the first time ESPN's Game Day showed up in LA. First game, USC versus Cal. That was the game where Aaron Rodgers kept throwing little dump-off passes, little screen passes for 23 straight completions. It was frustrating as hell to watch. Man, was that a hard game to watch. I was standing there in the herd, section 13, row 14, right there on the wall, and that's where the game ended, right in front of me. That was the Manny Wright game, and that's where history was written. It looked like Cal was going to drive. They were driving. They scored the touchdown. They were going to win that game. But Manny Wright, he found that dog inside of him, owned the line of scrimmage, put enough pressure on Aaron Rodgers, and yeah, like I said, history was recorded. Many people, I was never at the Coliseum for that 1974 55-24 USC win over Notre Dame, but everybody who was at that game, who was also at this game in the Coliseum in 2004, said this was a close second as far as the Coliseum being as loud as it could get. Number 2 on my list. It was the 2004-2005 season. USC 55, Oklahoma 19. Look, this game was over 5 minutes after ESPN's Mark May said, USC just doesn't have the athletes to play with Oklahoma. Remember that? Remember the pregame show? By the time the third quarter was halfway over, there was I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head. There was a defensive lineman. Legend has it, urban myth. He said, hey, he was asking the USC offensive line when they were, between plays, can you guys just run the ball and keep the clock moving, please? They just wanted the game to end because they had zero answer. Whether it was Dominic Byrd making one-handed catches, Steve Smith, Lendale White, Reggie Bush. I mean, Matt Leinart just, it was crazy what USC did to that team. It almost looked like they had Oklahoma's playbook, and Oklahoma had zero idea how to contain this offense. No idea. It was embarrassing. I almost felt bad for Oklahoma fan. Almost. Didn't. In fact, what made this game so much fun after the game, number one, it had to be the biggest beatdown in a championship game watched by a national audience. But if you wanted to, kind of relive it as it was going, there was an Oklahoma message board. I can't remember the name of it, but and I'll try and remember and talk about it in another episode. Anyways, Sooner fans were so fatigued by what they were witnessing during that game. They had one of those game threads. It got to, 200 pages, well over 2,000 posts. Anyways, one of their posters said, and I quote, my wife feels so bad for me right now, she's offering me pity sex. She's like, honey, turn off the TV. I'll go make you feel better. That's where Oklahoma fan was during that game. All right. Number 1, I think everybody knows where I'm going with this. 4th and 9, Bush push. I mean, how could it be anything else, right? If that game isn't the number 1 game on your list, you better have a good one. Or again, remember, the cutoff time frame starts in 2000, ends in 2024 because 2025 hasn't happened yet. So there's my top 5. You're the ones that missed the cut, right? Like I said, it's a hard list. I didn't have USC versus Fresno State in 2005. Remember that game where Reggie went for 500 plus all-purpose yards? He's the reason USC had the chance to play Texas for that three-peat. There's another one that didn't make the cut. Remember Rick Neuheisel's timeout call? Yep. The one where Matt Barkley went deep to Damian Williams. That game was so much fun. And there wasn't really a whole lot riding on it, but that game was so much fun to watch. 50-0. Remember USC blanked UCLA 50-0? Didn't make the list. There's another shutout that didn't make the list. USC 23, Auburn 0. On the Plains, Jordan Hare. What about the comeback of the shoe? Matt Barkley, Joe McKnight, Stephon Johnson. That Rose Bowl win against Penn State didn't make the list, didn't make the cut. Okay, which games made your top 5 list compared to mine? And then don't forget, later in the week, make sure you check out Inside the Trojan Huddle, the weekly panel show that I'm a part of, and let's compare notes. That's it for this episode of Locked On USC. I'll be back again tomorrow. We do this 5 times a week. We'll see if there's any recruiting news. I'm sure I'll find something to talk to you about. Guarantee I'll find something to talk to you about. Otherwise, what's the point? But that's why you're going to be here. That's why you make Locked On USC your first listen every day. And when you're done making Locked On USC your first listen, your first watch, don't forget about the Portal Show on YouTube. Brian Smith is your host. And then when you're all done with the Locked On Network, get on over there to wearesc.com. Between myself, Scott Schrader, Eric McKinney, Chris Arledge, got some outstanding content for you. You need to go check it out. All right. Till then, everyone, you know what to do.